of wholeness, freedom, and happiness, no matter what seems to be swirling around in our experiences. Let us be the anchor, the root that holds the peace. Last week, we took a vacation from stress. We had a great time. And we discussed that to really have true security, we must depend upon our relationship to a higher power, to God itself. And we talked about what the word secure means. It means without care, and comes from two Latin words, esse, without, and cure, meaning care. So without care. When we're aligned with divine energy, we are without care. When we believe that God is our security, we're not depending on these outside external circumstances, because they're always changing. They're always changing. That which we build in the world is temporary. That which we build within us, when we connect consciously with our divinity, that is permanent. That is our real truth. That constant connection with divinity, that is ours forever. Nobody can take that away. Nobody can take that away. So keeping with the idea of conscious connection, not only with that indwelling divine essence, but with the greater I am, the unconditional, ever-present, all-encompassing, everlasting love of divine peace, of God itself. Ernest Holmes writes in his Science of Mind book, "Only peace can enter the gates of reality and sit at the table of love. The divine host serves not his bounty to confusion, but distributes his gifts to those who enter his gates with peace in their minds and love in their hearts." He continues, "Ye are the light of the world. Man is the candle of the Lord. How important then that this light be kept trimmed and burning with the oil of pure spirit through the wick of peace and love." Today is about an act of God that comes from within us, within the human experience. That we are the human expressions of that greater power, of God itself. And so today we will explore our unconditional love for one another, unconditionally. And we will talk about a profound form that love takes, and that is compassion. And I know that everyone here has experienced this thing called compassion, when you are feeling empathy and caring, love for your fellow traveler on this earthly plane. Your heart is full. You have this sense of openness, of softness. You feel really good, receptive, truly alive, right? Yeah. Now let's think for a moment. When you are in the opposite of compassion, you call that possibly judgment about another, anger, finding fault, fear. That would be the opposite of compassion. When you're in this kind of mode, your heart may be full, but full of what? Full of what? Where is your feeling for unity and oneness when you're in that state? You feel separated, restricted, and completely not in alignment with the infinite power of God. And that doesn't feel good. That does not feel good. It cannot possibly feel good. And God is whatever your thought of that higher power is, the great creative genius of this universe that we live in. But what we're doing here is we're talking about an experience. And when we go into the world, are we truly living it? We talk it here, but are we bringing it into the world? Are we bringing that compassion? Are we bringing that love into the world. Compassion, empathy, love, caring equals expansive wholeness, a sense of oneness, a greater degree of aliveness. That's what compassion does. Anger, judgment, blame, fear equals restriction, separation. It shrinks our essence instead of expanding it. We can only be in expansion when we have a heart that is open and filled with unconditional love, which equals compassion. So listen to what Ernest Holmes' thoughts were in a Science of Mind article, which I think really sums it up nicely too. If we can become the living embodiment of love and light, and we can, by the way, these aren't just words. If we can bind ourselves together reverently in love and compassion, in mutual tolerance and understanding, under the cohesive powers of the universal law of good and the beneficence of a divine and universal presence, then shall we be able to lead the world down the pathway of new enlightenment. I think that's really powerful. We can lead the world down the pathway of new enlightenment. You can do that. Do you want to play a leading role in this leading the world? I think most of you would like to do that. Some may be stronger than others, but I think all of us would like to be in this flow of a new enlightenment, because the old one's not working. The old way of being is not working. This is a whole new way of constructing how to show up in life, how to experience our life. And we're doing it now from a place of compassion, from a place of unconditional love, from a place of peace. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about compassion for the things that are easy to have compassion over. Children that are starving in other worlds, and people, all people starving, we have compassion. We have compassion for innocent people caught in the crossfires of wars. We have compassion for the horrific experiences that took place on September 11th. We have compassion for those things. Today, I want to talk about having compassion and love and caring for those people that might not seem so lovable, who don't seem so yeah, it's a little tricky. They don't seem so compassion worthy. And this is where the rubber hits the road. This is where we get to really practice these teachings. Because these teachings are a way of living life. Let us remember that. All the teachings that we have in the classes, that we have here Sunday, is so that we can lead a life that fulfills us, and then we can be on that leading edge, that leading pathway of enlightenment. Today I want to talk about having compassion, love, and caring. So let me, again, share the words of Ernest Holmes, but just, I put a few little sentences in there on what I just read. If we become the living embodiment of love and light to those we find unlovable, if we can bind ourselves, he writes, together reverently in love and compassion, in mutual tolerance and understanding of those we judge despicable, under the cohesive power of the universal law of good and the beneficence of the divine and universal presence, then and only then shall we be able to lead the world down the pathway of a new enlightenment. So in order to be the person who can lead the world down that pathway of a new enlightenment, there is a spiritual practice that we must become very proficient at. We must engage in it regularly in small ways to begin with, so that we can build our compassion muscles. For when something really big comes along and we really have to put it, when that rubber hits the road thing, we really have to put it into use. Now sometimes we balk at this practice. We want to be spiritual. We want to live God-filled lives. But don't ask me to do this. And that I just cannot do. Does anyone know what this practice could possibly be?
Forgiveness.
Yes! Very good, Susan. You always were an A student. Forgiveness! Forgiveness. I've been teaching a class for many, many years, radical forgiveness. And it's amazing how sometimes people balk at even signing up for the class, because in signing up for the class on forgiveness, they know something's got to change. They got to change something inside, and that ego self, that human self within us, might not want to take that plunge, but forgiveness is the only way. It really is. Forgiveness is a step. Let us remember that. It is not an end. It is a step. Step in the right direction, that's for sure. It's a step to open our hearts so that the love can flow through us. Remember that when we hold resentment and anger in ourselves, that there is no way that the pure, free-flowing, fluid love of God can pass through us. It can't. It becomes stuck. It becomes blocked. So we're not expansive. We're restrictive. That's why we teach the forgiveness. So important. So I want to share with you 3 types of forgiveness this morning that we must diligently practice, because it is a practice. And we practice the first 2 because they're a little easier in order to prepare us for the bigger forgiveness, if you will. Even though there's no large and small in divine mind, there can sometimes be in our life experience. We judge things as big and small. So first we have convenient forgiveness. Okay, and this is the easy one, but it's still very necessary and a good place to start for if we have not been in that forgiving mode, if we hold on to stuff. Example, a friend that might be late for lunch, something like that. And you just hold in your heart. Forgiveness, let it go. Let it go. Small things. Practice with those kids convenient, just let it go. Someone doesn't call you when they said they would. I forgive them and bless them. Let it go. These are the things that are easy to forgive and that move us into the next forgiveness, which is inconvenient forgiveness, which is one of 2 things. I love you, and you didn't do something that I really wanted you to do, or I don't really like you, and you still didn't do anything that I wanted you to do. So this forgiveness is just a little bit trickier than the other one, but it's moving in the correct direction, okay? So we have to bless those people. Forgiveness is a spiritual practice. So in those kinds of situations where you don't like the person or you really don't like what they did, okay, that's the inconvenient one. Okay, this is the time that we practice sending a blessing. And we can start easy. We don't have to jump right in it because it's kind of hard to jump right in it. So it could be you don't have to fall in front of a moving train. I bless you anyway, and know that God's love is with you. Or it could be, if you don't get hit by a semi-truck first, I bless you and know that God's love is with you. And it can be anything. So you can think of if you, and put in your own ideas, and then send a blessing. It's just, we're dealing with, remember, we're dealing with this human thing that's going on that's not our real truth, but we're still having that experience. So let yourself off the hook. Curse the person out first in your mind. And then send them a blessing, because in sending the blessing, you're shifting the energy. You see, and you're letting yourself move in a gentler way until all of a sudden you just start blessing people. And you know what? I can't hold anger for more than a second because of all the forgiveness work we've done. I look at Carol, because she's been in class with me for like 5 years doing this forgiveness work, because it's so vital. It's so vital. So an abbreviated version of this practice then, the second practice, could be, I love you, I bless you, I release you. And we're releasing someone for what we think that they should be doing that is correct. That's the release part. We're released because we have our own ideas. But we have to realize that so does everyone else. If we choose to live a compassionate life, if we choose to be a player in the leading world, that pathway of new enlightenment, we must practice both of these forgivenesses first, and on a regular basis. You can't just do it when it's convenient. Convenient, inconvenient, all of the time. As in Carol's reading, forgive everybody, all of the time. And of course, you know, there are lots and lots of opportunities to use forgiveness in life. I know there are. You know, there are a lot of people that just inconvenience us. Or you might say, a saying I actually kind of like, they just got on my very last nerve. Those kinds of people. When you're feeling that kind of thought going in your mind, those are the, you like it too, right? Yeah, I like that. I heard that a couple of years ago. I thought it was great. It's probably been around forever, but I'm always slow. But that's how you start to really practice. When you feel yourself thinking those thoughts and you take a breath, just release it. Bless the person, however you got to do it. Because every time we engage in convenient and inconvenient forgiveness, we let more of this love, of this good flow through us. We allow more of it to flow through us. And it allows us to move into the third type of forgiveness, which is called profound forgiveness. And it calls up to a very high and holy practice, really. To move beyond our opinion and to see the spiritual truth. It's like what we say in our teachings, in our classes. We are trained, the practitioners are trained rigorously to see beyond the human condition. Ernest Holmes talks about it all the time. To the perfection, the spiritual truth, that is the essence of who we are. So that's what we're learning. This is profound forgiveness. We can't even find anything to forgive, actually, when we get to that place of total connection with it. The master teacher, Jesus, spoke of a profound forgiveness when he tells us to resist not evil, to love our enemies, and to do good for them who would do us evil. For this is to manifest the spirit of love, which is God, and God loves all alike, and causes his rain to fall and his sun to shine upon all. In arms which are all inclusive, divine love encompasses everything. So that's kind of what, as we know, if you've ever studied the master teacher Jesus did, just loved unconditionally. And I have a story here, a true story out of Washington, D.C. a few years ago. It's about a 14-year-old boy who had shot and killed an innocent teenager to prove his worth to his gang members. At the trial, the victim's mother sat silently, and at the end of the trial, when the youth was convicted of the killing, you might remember this, after the verdict was announced, she stood up slowly and stared directly at him and stated, "I am going to kill you." It gets good. Then the youth was taken away after he was sentenced to several years in a juvenile facility. And after 6 months, the mother started, this is a true story, started to visit this young boy in prison. And it seemed that she was his only visitor because he had been living on the streets. He didn't have a family. And so she started to talk with him, and she gave him money to buy cigarettes. And then, step by step, she started to visit him regularly, and she brought him food and small gifts, gradually. And near the end of the sentence, she asked him, what would he be doing when he got out of jail? He was confused and uncertain. So she offered to help set him up to get a job with a friend of hers. Then she asked him, where would he live? And since he had no family and was living on the streets, he didn't have an answer. So she offered to lend him a spare room in her home temporarily. For 8 months, he lived in her home, worked his job. Then one evening, she called to him into the living room and asked him to sit down opposite her, and she said, do you remember in the courtroom when I said, I'm going to kill you? I sure do, he said. How could I ever forget it? I did not want the boy who could kill my son for no reason to remain alive on this earth. I wanted him to die. And that's why I started to visit you. Every time I read this, I get goosebumps, God knows. That's why I started to visit you in jail. That's why I got you the job and let you live in my home. That's how I set about killing him. And that old boy, he's gone. So now, I want to ask you, she said, since my son is gone and that killer is gone, would you like to stay here? Because I would truly like to adopt you. And this is a true story. She became the mother of her son's killer. The mother he never had, he never knew. This is just an example of profound forgiveness.